Hello. I will invite you first to take a deeper breath with me. Let a big sigh pour out as it wants to. Invite a gentle rock into the body, if possible. Relax the back body into some support and drop the breath down into the pelvis. Allow your sense of perception to dip down into and reside in the place of the pelvis as you listen, if you can. Drop open the jaw and soften the face. And invite a softening into your body as you listen. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Bree Woolman. I am, today I feel very much like a body poetess and aestheticatrix. I am a creatrix of many modalities. And one of my most recent creations is a program that's beginning in April and extending throughout the growing season to the summer solstice called the Well of Wonder. And I felt compelled to talk to you today about what I mean by Well of Wonder. And mostly I think I feel this compulsion because the essence of this creation and it's the essence of how it moved through me to be birthed and the intentions of it, what I am hoping for you to experience from it, are very alive right now in the energies that we're in. Today's February 11th when I'm creating this of 2022, and that is just past Imbolc, the time of the year when we can really have this felt sense in the body of the days getting longer. And as you can see, we get we can really feel the sun returning, and we feel that stirring in our body. And it can be unsettling. We can feel very anxious and buzzy and not know what to do with that energy. And that is the seeds of creation, right? That is the force that encourages the seed to break open from its shell and for roots to take soil and sprouts to then reach through the surface and bloom. And it's the same essence of like foreplay energy. And to me, that is the gateway. That is the potential, right? The place of pure potential where we can immerse ourselves into what I call the Well of Wonder. And it works in a variety of different ways, but the Well of Wonder to me is this primordial pool of source consciousness, womb consciousness, she, her, the goddess, life force energy, the cosmos, however you hash it, right? It's the womb in the body, it's the pelvis, it's the primal brain, the animal brain, it's the deep self, it's the soul, it's right. And there's so many words for it because we grasp with our human language in an attempt to understand and explain something that is indescribable. Hence the reason we have so many primarily women doing the work of the feminine mysteries and teaching of the feminine mysteries and feminine mystery schools, right? And it's this mystic, indescribable with human language understanding that can be known in the body, because it is a returning to and a resensitizing and a reintegration, a resolving of our being back into this liquid primordial pool. It's a return, a homecoming. It's an experience and a felt sense that we can root ourselves back into. We're always connected to this, so we can just drop ourselves back into this experiencing with practice, with work, right? Because while we are inextricably linked to this ever existing essence of life force, right? This place from whence energy moves through and into fruition, right? Energy and matter. Energy moves through and becomes matter, becomes form, becomes the flower, the human, the tree, the wave, the earth, right? We're inextricably linked to that. There's no taking us out of that. We were born of that, and we are always in touch with that, whether or not we're consciously accessing it or experiencing the felt sense of it, or truly listening and aligning to it. And so the well of wonder to me is this source energy. I really envision it like there's literally a place on the land where I live that it feels like a microcosm expression of this, and there's literally this sort of churning, spiralescent movement of water through portals. There's literally a beautiful bridge that creates this still pool where there's this reflection of the bridge that has a round archway underneath it that then creates what looks like the completion of the circle in the water. And it really feels like a portal. And then there's this place of more rapids in the river where the waterfall churns and is more momentous. It's more alive, it's vigorous, right? And then it moves on and becomes gentler. And like my whole being, my whole animal being, my whole divine being, my subtle bodies and my very concrete animal body of tissues and bone is in this place and says, this is what it is. I know this feeling. I understand this in my body. And I was inspired by that sort of essence of churning and vitality and this sensation of portal and this moving through that became so alive in my body. That's just one experience of this plug into this well of wonder, which then allows me to recognize that this vessel itself is a well of wonder, and that I can consciously choose to well and raise these primordial waters of energy in my body, primordial knowing of this life force energy in my body, and allow it to move through, right? In this place, it's every time it's an experience of inspiring this. And so to me, the well of wonder is this homeland of our animal bodies. And it is the birthplace, and it is what compels us in all of the ways that we are compelled to flow and move and interact with our worlds. And when we are aware of it, and we are consciously co-creating, and we are opening ourselves to it, and we are allowing ourselves to become resensitized to this essence within ourselves that's imprinted and encoded in our bodies because we come from that, right? I often think of it as like the galaxies in the cosmos, right? That like somewhere, somehow we're floating in this ethereal space that's hard to name as soul, that then chooses to incarnate and move through that into form, which then becomes this, just like the planet, just like everything in the universe. Where did that come from, right? We once were unnameable idea, energy, intention, hope, that then moved through and incarnated into form, into matter. My puppy is having a moment. And we cannot separate ourselves from that, and yet there's lots and lots and lots of history and thousands of years of conditioning that play a role in why it's hard for us to feel this. May be hard for some of us to feel this, or be something that we can maybe feel a sense of longing for understanding or reunion with in our bodies, but we've never quite experienced it. Or we might, as I'm talking, be able to experience, like, oh yeah, I experience what might be that sensation when I'm, making love to my partner or partners, or when I am painting, or when I am nursing my child. And there might be some moments where you go, oh, I can kind of feel, oh, I didn't have any words for it. I didn't recognize it until this moment that might be what that is. But I feel, okay, feeling it. And for me, there are several moments that I can pinpoint in my life when I've experienced this understanding, this like primal, indescribable with human language knowing, this felt sense of knowing, this felt sense of homecoming, of yes within my body. One of which is when I was doing my very first yoga teacher training with Jessie Marino of Wild Essence School of Feminine Magic and Mysteries. And in her yoga teacher training, this was back in 2015, I remember very clearly having this sensation at the end of one of her yoga classes of this absorption into a state of oneness, of commune, of recognizing my interconnectivity in a very visceral and I could touch it way. I could, like, it's hard to describe unless you experience it, but it is such a solid knowing. Because when we have these experiences, it is speaking to the imprintation in our bodies. It's speaking to our primal animal brain. It's speaking to our physical body tissues. It's speaking to our soul. And it is very real. It is very real when we experience it. And unfortunately, in the world that we live in, this isn't something that is taught to us. It isn't something, there isn't a space that is held for this. We have to go and seek it. Or, like I said, we may have glimpses of it in our lives where we might touch on it, but we don't even have spaces to talk about it because it's just not something that is spoken about. And in fact, most of the places where we might experience it, like our art, like intimate sensual, sexual experiences, like being in the land, like our primal ancestors were. These are all things that are really shut down, really discouraged, and made really difficult to prioritize. So it makes sense that we might not have language, or we might not have an awareness, like a very focused attention to these experiences when we have them. We might just be like, oh, that was blissful. And maybe some of us have never experienced these sensations of bliss. And so that was my first experience with it. And even at that time, I don't think I could have named what it was. I probably couldn't even have named that was as significant as it was. And only in all of these years later, since, can I identify the sort of switch on of my body beginning to sensitize back into that understanding, and all of the magic that has unfolded as a result. So this, to me, this is a huge component of what the Well of Wonder is about. An opportunity to resolve ourselves back into this place within the body, within the wider web of existence, and for that to pulsate through our whole bodies. Recently, in one of the containers that we have with Wild Essence, it's one of our free online spaces for anyone that wants to participate in our Mighty Network. We were, one of our students was initiated a conversation around, like, what does an orgasm feel like? If you were to describe what an orgasm feels like to someone who's never had one, how would you do that? To me, this resolution, this dissolving back into this primordial life force energy, source energy, goddess energy, the cellular makeup of our bodies, that from which it's our mother, and it is wholly known in our bodies once we reawaken our relationship with that, is what orgasm is. To me, that's what orgasm feels like. It is this reigniting, resparking of this pulsating life through every single cell in my body, and my ability to recognize that, to be aware of that in that moment, and then play with it and swim in it, right? Like I can dip my hands into the well and drink from it. I can carry the water out into my communities. I can choose the pace at which I drink it down into my body, or how low I dip my hands, right? This idea that I can draw from it and resolve, merge into it in my way, in my time, and I can play with that, is to me what it feels like to be in an orgasmic experience. And from that place, that's the place from which we can literally conceive and become pregnant and birth some physical form into the world. The same thing is true with our art, with our work, with our style, with our sense of self, with our hope, with our wonder, right? It all is part of that experience and emerges from that experience. And to me, that is the point of the Well of Wonder, giving you opportunities where we can get a little bit more out of our intellectual brain, the left brain, the front brain, the analytic brain, and into the primal brain, the animal brain, the back of the brain, and the back body, and the animal body, and the deep body, and experience, because it has to be something that we experience, this depth of our connection to far more than what we can see, and far more than just our own bodies, and far more than what we may tend to on a day-to-day basis. But this well of creation energy, of mother, of nature, of presence, of immersion, of oneness, where once we are in that, there is no untelling us that we are always able to access that it lives within us, that we have the ability to alchemize it, to dance with it, to invite it into relationship at all times, to expand it in our bodies, to expand it in our lives, to grow it, to let it move through us, and let it touch everything in our lives. That I want this opportunity of the Well of Wonder to be a portal to experiencing living from this place where we can always drop into the alignment or stay in this resonance, where we're always allowing this flow of relating to just move. And it is incredibly powerful, potent, romantic, erotic. It's sensual, it's orgasmic, it's hopeful, it's wonderful. We are all of that. We are all of that, all of the time. And we shut it down, and we have thousands of years of repression inside of us, inside of ourselves, trauma that's been carried forward that has desensitized us to it. So again, really, it's about a resensitizing, a re-immersion, a dissolving, an absorption, a saturation. I want you to become saturated in this life force energy that is you. And that's why so many, people in modern day spirituality will talk about us being God. You are God. I am God. Because we are that creation energy manifest, and literally every cell within our body is a portal to that, is imprinted with that, understands that in an implicit way that, like riding a bike, you can get on and just ride a bike after years because your body just understands this. It is digested, integrated, metabolized information. We are born with that, and over time, our conditioning in this lifetime and much of the cellular memory that we inherit from our ancestors becomes an inhibitor of the feeling of the fullness, which is why in early childhood we are so erotic, so present, so interwoven with everything, and we speak the language of nature, and we don't even think anything of touching and caressing trees and talking to animals. And I remember myself as a child being someone who was erotically charged, who would move my pelvis in a way that made all of the adults around me very uncomfortable. And then I learned through my lifetime, right, through my life experiences and the over culture and the way that we're taught and all of our imprinted fears and trauma responses, to shut that down. But in early childhood, we are so sensory. This is how we exist. This is how we learn. We come from living in the womb, where we're in between the primordial pool and earth, in the body of the mother, in the womb, but in the waters, right? We're in the organ tissues, which to me is very earthy. And yet we're also in the water, and we're also in the ether, in the cosmos, and we're also on the land. And we're created from the fire spark of of conception, right? there's so much power in early childhood, in birth, in the young being, and a lot of that gets shut down, but it doesn't go away. It just lies dormant in our bodies and craves so desperately to be reawoken. And if you are experiencing sensations of longing at all during the winter and during this time in late winter here, where we're getting ready to transition into the springtime, if you're feeling like that ache, that unnameable ache, this something wants me, that is a huge component of it, is this return. And much of the work that I've been doing over the past couple of years, because of my experience, so I'm so grateful to Jessie Marino of Wild Essence, who's just a beautiful human and a beautiful friend, that I met back in 2015, and my whole body went, yes, I need to be around this person and I need to be in her space. And when I went to her yoga studio, my whole body was like, this is necessary. You're home. This is your place. There's like, to me, that is touching on that, that primal knowing that I want to stimulate and play with in the Well of Wonder. And as a result of that choice to listen to that primal animal body knowing, the life force energy moving through me and guiding me and directing me, I met my partner, who I am with now and could not be more in love with and more grateful for. I moved 3,000 miles across the country because I was compelled to be in this place on this land. I live on Cowlitz land in the Pacific Northwest, what is Washington State, in Southwest Washington State. And my partner, before I met him, was moving here. And it was like all of this alignment, all of this like, remember. And then over the past few years, completely moving out of working in misaligned ways, and being able to invest in working with Wild Essence, working for myself, my own personal growth, and knowing who I am truly as a embodiment of this source energy, an embodiment of this fractal of nature. I've been introduced through Jessie to working with Danielle Dulski in the Hag School, and working with Jenny Rose Love and Liz Koch and her core awareness. And I'm probably missing some incredible facilitators and teachers and guides who we're all speaking in these tiny, different, slightly different facets of because of who we are as slightly different facets of the whole, right? We're all speaking to and cultivating bodies of work and our slightly nuanced language and expression of this same thing, right? This source energy, goddess, she, her, capital S, capital H, the more, as Jessie calls it, this pure potentiality, life force, the void, the rich, fertile dark, the dark feminine, the wild feminine, the divine feminine. We're all speaking to this because we are allowing it to move through our bodies. We are allowing the imprintation of it and the relationship that we are coded with in our bodies to be in relationship with it and to move through us. the way that it wants to be heard, and to resonate with whomever's listening, so that you find your partners, your spaces, the places and the people and the practices that resonate with you, so that you can access those sensations, that you can remember, that you can revive and come alive with this pulsing energy in your body, this pulsing knowing, this understanding, and let it work on you. It's getting the conditioning out of the way. It's getting the imbalances out of the way, and it's recalibrating. It's bringing this energy, this understanding, this knowing back alive in the body in a way that brings us into wholeness, that brings us into the fullness of our human experience, and allows us to relate to all of our lives in a different way that feels more full, that feels more serving, that feels more alive, that feels more orgasmic, feels more hopeful, feels more wonderful. And from there, know how to work with that when we become disenchanted, when we become over analytic, when we become forceful, when we become pushy, when we're trying to control, right? And we remember the feelings of safety and being held, of this mother essence that is existing within us and wants us to remember, and wants us in large numbers to be doing this work, even if it's just within our own bodies, for the recalibration of our societies and the way that we interact with the planet, and the way that we are relating honorably and in reverence with each other and with the natural resources of Mother Earth, who created us. It's like the mother creates the form of the child, and there's reciprocity, there's synergy in that, right? I haven't had the privilege of birthing a child in my life. I've had the privilege of birthing lots of creations in my life, and it's the same essence. But there's synergy, there's a reciprocity here, that when the mother births the child is sustained by the mother, and the mother is sustained by this relationship of sustaining the child, of being the nourishment for the child and learning through the child as well. And so we're the same thing with the earth, right? We are animal creatures that come from the earth, and we can either sustain her or we can pillage and rape from her, and we're harming her and harming ourselves in the process. And so not only is this a practice or a choice of re-enlivening our orgasmic, erotic, sensual, fulfilled, alive living, but when we are in that place, our relationships are nourished. The way that we treat Mother Earth and the land we live on is nourished. The way that we create has a nourishing effect on the world, and it reaches outside of us and has the potential to really recalibrate a world that is weary. And I believe that, what we're experiencing has its purpose, and probably so that what we're talking about can be remembered, right? Like, if the world were not as grave and harrowing as it is, would we be compelled to recalibrate, right? Or would we just continue participating in it the way that it is? It has to get more uncomfortable for us to deconstruct it, and for us to completely break it down and allow it to become something new, or really maybe become something really old. But to me, it's that same essence of the the seed, right? Like the seed. I love this. I remember when I was going through a big transition for myself in 2015, 2016, when all of this wanted to start shifting within me. That story sort of the concept of the seed doesn't understand that, like, that it's becoming something else. It just feels in total destruction, right? It feels like it feels grave. It feels like death. But that is what is required. That pressing up against the cell walls and the breaking forth of the roots and the stem in order to become the rose. Right? And I think so many of us would want, like, we couldn't imagine if the seed didn't go through that destruction in order to become the rose, because the rose is so, it's precious, it's inspiring, it's stunning, we're so compelled to the rose, right? as beings and as human beings, and yet that's the seed has to go through that complete and utter destruction to become something new. And so the same thing is true for us as human beings. And I think many of us who identify as women or have bodies with breasts and uteruses or a uterus and ovaries, or once had those things, we might understand some of what I'm saying here on a more visceral level. Because of the cycles that we are compelled through, moon after moon, month after month. The light is doing things. And our bodies understand the death and rebirth. Even if we aren't able to, like, intellectualize and understand this happening in that way, our bodies know. And so when we hear some of this kind of talk, or we have other experiences where we're guided into this immersion into this source, mother, goddess, primordial energy, our bodies are like, oh yeah, oh yeah, we're bursting forth, we're breaking forth from one form into another. We're moving from one cycle into another. We're moving from death into birth. So these cycles happen in our lives regardless of how present we are to them. And we often, when we're not present to them, we often resist them. We fight, and we make things a fuck ton harder for ourselves. And what might it be if we decided to be brave? What might happen if we decided to be brave and we decided to let ourselves be moved, and we decided to embody our core and resolve into the flow that is moving us, and experience it and savor it and like saturate in that for a period of time to really build relationship and cultivate and understand a fluency? That then became enmeshed in every way that we saw and touched and tasted and breathed and listened and felt ever onward in varying capacities, because we are always shifting beings. And so there will be times when this is hyper magnified and we are more consciously aware of it, or we're intentionally choosing to, nourish this state of being and let it be in everything that we do. But there's this not able to go back once we've experienced it. And we know when we're starting to feel disenchanted or disillusioned, or we're letting other things kind of clog up the well or dry up the well. And when we understand how to be in this flow, it's so enlivening to our bodies, so enlivening to our creations. It will impact in ways that I can't even describe. Like, the teacher in me wants to give you very specific objectives and outcomes for the Well of Wonder, and I will work on it. But again, that's a very masculine, more analytic brain, more frontal brain way, more projective kind of way of wanting to be. And I want this to be a much more receptive, dissolving, dissolution, resolving, felt sense experiencing rather than a mental analytic one. But the intention of what I believe this can be is an unnameable and immensely powerful, potent, enlivening, enriching, nourishing, satiating way of living, and something that can be channeled into our creations, our relationships, our lives in a way that is so compelling and so unifying and so balanced and healthy and whole, that this is the potential that our world needs for sustenance, for the new dawn that wants to come, for the rebirthing of how our societies will be, right? Not just total destruction, but a new dawn, a new becoming, an unbecoming and a new becoming. And to me, this offering is meant to be embodiment exercises, experiential practices, so that you can tap into and feel this very viscerally in your body and understand it in a way that defies human language. And then practices, ritualistic practices, somatic practices, ceremony, devotion to this essence of whole self that wants us so badly, that it works on us in ways that we can't know, but once we experience them, we will know for sure that that is what is happening, and that is the magic. That is the experiencing of the magic and the digested, nourished understanding. I don't even know how just to describe it, but we're just saturated in this understanding of magic. We become so resilient and so fluidly stable and so enchanted and enamored and pulsating with this orgasmic way of being, which does not mean that we don't go through challenging emotions. We do. We are in a state of full presence and full immersion in what we feel and all of our senses, and we make space for that. It doesn't mean that it's going to be sunshine and butterflies and rainbows all the time, but we live in a way that is so knowing of orgasmic, erotic, sensual, completely present, bursting with life being, that nothing can shake that. We know how to re-access it. We know how to resolve back into it. And whatever's going on out there cannot disenfranchise us from that, because we've reawoken the innate knowing. And it will no longer lie dormant. It may be quieter at certain times. But it is awake and it is alive, and we are in relationship with it, and it makes life far more worthwhile. And mystical and beautiful, and I never want to stop tending that well. So I could keep going and probably getting a little bit more abstract. So let me close this off here, but let's just take a moment here before I end this to swallow into the body. Just like you sip in and drink in through a straw, right? Sip in and swallow in your consciousness all the way down into the pelvis. You might even want to adjust your posture and get your sits bones rooted on whatever you're sitting. Or if you're laying down, just lean into the awareness of the back body. Pour your consciousness into your primal brain, the back of your brain, the back of your skull, the back of your throat, the back of your heart. Your sacrum, or the back of your pelvis. You drop your awareness like a drop of water down into the pool that exists in the pelvis. And see or feel the reverberation of that drop rippling and spiraling and rippling and spiraling in this well. And see if you can feel every little cell in your body a microcosm of that macrocosm, its own little well. Each cell is its own little well, like the well of the pelvis, like the well of the cosmos, like the well of depth from which we emerge. Just be with that for a bit. And if that resonated with you, if it's speaking to you, if you're intrigued, if you want to know more, if you want to explore this more, I'm here. The Well of Wonder is beginning in April, and it's on sale now. And you can find all of the details about it in my link tree, which I'll make sure is connected to this video. Thank you for being here. Thank you for witnessing me. Thank you for allowing some of this to land in your body and your being. And I hope that you will well tend to yourself in whatever ways you decide, and that perhaps that might include you exploring what you can reap from the Well of Wonder and how it can become an offering both to your body, to the planet, to your relationships, to your work, to all of life. So thank you. I love you, and I'll see you.